So I just got done watching It, the new Stephen King movie, which is a somewhat remake of a television miniseries that came out in 1990. This was one of the first horror movies I watched, and I heard it was one of the ultimate scary movies. People have really bad phobias of clowns. I remember having to beg my mom just to let me see this movie, and she eventually let me. I admit I never got too scared by it, but overall it was a very entertaining movie. And now, 27 years later, it has been remade into a feature length movie. And there's been a lot of hype over the past few months about this movie. And I think most of the hype has been this is going to probably be one of the most scariest movies ever made because it really feeds off your phobia of clowns. So we get to the opening of this movie. Now, I like to point out there are going to be some spoilers in this video. So bear with me here. So the last television miniseries did not open the way this new feature length movie opens. It opened with um, one of the main characters finding out there was another murder in Derry and him starting to call all his old friends, and that's where we eventually got to Georgie. But in this version, it literally just cuts straight to the chase, and it cuts straight to the scene that really kind of sets up everything to where Georgie gets murdered, and it's the classic scene that was shown in the miniseries as well, uh, where he's chasing the paper boat down the rainy street. And there's better production this time. There's more uh, build up, and I think better character development. I hate to be nitpicky. This Bill Sasgard, I think he does a great job. And I think they made the clown this time around look a lot scarier. I do kind of wish they went with someone older so they can kind of get more of that, uh, get kind of the right kind of effect going. But I think they got something really scary and just really frightening going here. So yeah, the movie opens with Georgie, and I don't know if I should warn people about this. I think people go into this movie with an open mind, and they go into this movie with with certain expectations. And I think they know pretty much what they're seeing, but this time around they don't hold anything back. I mean, this time you actually see, like, I'm not kidding here. That you actually see Georgie's hand getting eaten off by the monster, by Pennywise, and he literally like gets this monstrous teeth. Like, it's not even like how it was in the original, in the original miniseries. He really just gets these monstrous, like the worst you can imagine, and just like eats his hand right, his arm actually right off, and he's crying. You see that kind of character development. Then he's swept under the sewer by the monster, and And yeah, that definitely leaves you. This time that leaves you with a really big uh, emotional investment. And this time the monster really, I would say, I think he's more of a monster in this version and a lot less of a clown. I This movie does play on put emphasis on the fear that we have of clowns. I do kind of feel like they could have put more emphasis on that fear a bit, but he does in this movie come off more as a monster, and it really feeds. He really feeds off certain fears. So, and I like how in this version it's set in the 80s, and they do a really good job uh, emphasizing that this movie is set in the 80s, and they do a good job setting up the characters and bringing them into the story, and they get the fashion right, they get the music right, they get the styles right. I personally think it's really hard to uh, uh, accurately replicate the 80s, because if you look at a lot of pictures of how people dressed and the hairstyles from the 80s, I really think it's something people kind of want to forget about, those nasty mullets and and bright colored clothes and whatnot. It can I personally just think it can be hard to get exactly accurate, but they do a really good job at it. Not just with all the nostalgia. And I gotta admit, I mean, I've never read the book. It was one of the books I've never gotten around to, but but just by seeing this movie, I can already tell it's very different from the book, and there's a lot of purists out there who, I mean, probably purists to this book, and probably also major Stephen King purist who would have wanted this to be a lot closer to the book, but I think most likely, with the changing trends and the change and how much has kind of changed since that book was written and published, it can be hard to make it exactly like the book, and I think the 80s setting was just the appropriate fit for this movie. And I think the next Stephen King book, the next adaptation they should do, should be a bigger budget version of The Stand. I think that would be the next step they should take in Stephen King adaptations. However, I hope they don't do a big budget version of The Langoliers. And I'm glad that they didn't use like things like they used in the original miniseries. I think they used like mummies and werewolves and things like that, because those, particularly mummies, they, you know, these weren't popular in the 80s, but I do wish they didn't go so far into the cliche of zombies, because I'm not a fan of the zombie genre. So I don't, I personally don't think zombies always necessarily go the creative route. I do think they could have uh, come up with some more creative things, and just kind of the zombies, but uh, with I forget the kid's name now. Which character was he? Someone's gonna correct me here once if they even bother watching this video. Well, what he saw wasn't a zombie. It was supposed to be like his fear, like a really really sick person. But I think it was too close to a zombie. I mean, there were some really good horror movies out in the '80s that they could have uh, borrowed from or capitalized to use on their fears, but I don't know what the reason was. Uh, Overall, I think they could have done better than just than just zombies. But yeah. Anyway, so I mean, we still have the bullying cliche, which for obvious reasons is not a cliche that's used in storytelling anymore. But it still fits in with the '80s theme, and and they've and you can tell that these guys are from the '80s, and they're not just these biker guys. They're just like these really trashy, just and the main bully. I mean, he's got the mullet thing going, and he's got a shitty father. I mean, you can kind of tell what I mean. You can kind of tell this guy's a dick, and kind of why. But there was like I think in the '80s there was kind of a retro kind of mod thing going. They could have used that if they want, but I'm glad these were more just like everything else in the movie. It was more accurate with the times, and there's more emphasis, particularly on Beverly in this version, especially with her abusive father, and I mean, they give hints to the level of abuse that she goes through both from her father, and she goes through some abuse at school too with these nasty rumors, and they don't they drop hints of the abuse that her father puts her through, but I don't know if I should go into detail about what kind of abuse he's inflicting on Beverly. But this is the superior version of it, I think, because it sets up the story better. It capitalizes on both our fears as moviegoers, and the characters' fears as well, and it's kept up, and it's updated actually for the times. And what else can I say about it? I mean, it also had a good sense of humor. I mean, I heard that it was kind of a comedy as well, and that kind of worried me because I didn't want the jokes to overshadow the fear element of this movie. But no, the jokes absolutely do not affect or overshadow the fear you feel in this movie. I mean, this is the scariest movie I've seen since The Ring or Cloverfield. I don't watch a lot of modern horror movies. If anyone knows me, I'm more into the sci-fi superhero genre, so I don't see a lot of horror movies. I don't watch a lot of them. I'm more into the classic Universal, Hammer, and that kind of stuff. but I really don't remember the last horror movie I saw, and was it Drag Me to Hell? I think the that that movie was so bad. That's probably why I haven't watched any horror movies in a long time. But um, so I'm glad they got a sequel going, and now we're gonna see these characters. We're gonna see these characters as adults in present day, 2017 or 2018. I'm very curious to see who's gonna play who. I mean, obviously, we're not gonna see Annette O'Toole again or any of those other people, but I'm very curious to see what actors they're gonna pick to play the grown up versions of these kids. I'm not sure if they're gonna go with well known actors or kind of unknown actors like they did with this movie. Uh, but but yeah, that will be very interesting to see. I mean, this movie. I mean, it's scary in all aspects of the word. It plays on your fear. It has character development. It has some method acting. I mean, it's great. I don't want to give any more spoilers, but it's slightly different in some ways with an aspects of the character's story background, story setup. In those ways, it's kind of different from the television miniseries, but I don't know how different it is from the book. I've only heard certain things about how different it is in the book. I've heard about the turtle mythology. I heard the ending in the book was a lot different. I'm glad they didn't go with the ending that's in the book because that would have not been appropriate. But what else can I say? That just say the ending is a lot different. I think it works better. As a matter of fact, the ending actually reminded me of that Star Trek: The Next Generation episode, "Skin of Evil." That's kind of what it reminded me of. I don't want to give any more spoilers. So yeah, if you're gonna go see it, be prepared. It's a very great movie, very scary. You know what you're getting yourself into. You know uh, what you pretty much know what you're up against. So so yeah, you know pretty much you'll know what you're buying the ticket for if you go see this movie. But yeah, I hope there's a sequel. I'm now very excited to hear the news about the sequel. Oh, and I forgot one thing to prep myself up for the fear I was going to experience in this movie. I didn't watch any like of the leaked scenes, or I only watched like two of the trailers. There's been a lot of different trailers floating around on the internet, but I tried to just avoid as much as I could on the internet about this movie so I could just prepare myself for the fear I was going to experience. I think it worked, and it left me with quite a good, what should I say, pretty substantial uh, emotional investment. So, and what was funny because I was actually the first one in the theater, so it kind of gave me the chills when I walked in there, and I didn't really see who was coming in, but when I turned around, I actually did see a kid with a red balloon, and that kind of uh, gave me the willies a bit, but you know what? I wasn't too scared by it, but yeah. So just see this movie. It's great. You're gonna be hearing a lot of good reviews about it, and and go into this movie with an open mind and know what you're paying for. And I hope there's a sequel, and I hope we can get more and better Stephen King adaptations out there. And yeah, thank you.